Welcome once again to Around the Conference. I'm your host, Paul Scavella. It's always a privilege for us to be here with you and for you to invite us into your front rooms. Today we're going to be talking about purpose and plans. God says in Jeremiah 29 that God knows the plans that He has for us. And the question comes to mind, are we willing to fit in to God's plans? Maybe you have your own plans. Our very special guest today is a young man who's preparing himself for ministry. And his story is very much exciting. But more than exciting, it's one that helps us to understand that God is able to do above, beyond that which we're able to think or even imagine.
So true.
And so I want you to help me to welcome to our program today, Jermy Arnold. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Today, I'm just tingling as I think about the fact that, one, God has plans for us. And number two, that your life is an example of how even when the enemy tries to thwart or intercept or misdirect God's plans, that He can work around all of that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Before we get to the story, however, tell us a little bit about Jermy, what you're doing now, and where are you from?
Okay. Thank you for having me on show today. I am a final year student at the Northern Caribbean University there in Jamaica.
Okay.
And I am from Belize.
Belize.
Yes, I'm from Belize. Belize is in Central America. It borders Mexico and Guatemala. So our second language there happens to be Spanish.
Okay.
And so I am being trained right now for ministry at the Northern Caribbean University.
Now, have you always, well, let me ask it this way. What drove you to Northern Caribbean University and especially to be engaged in preparation for pastoral ministry?
That's a good question. It was God who, before time, would have ordained that Jamaica be the place where I would be trained for ministry. And I believe later on in our conversation that will become plainer.
Yes.
And ministry, for me, came as a result of where I'm coming from. I could find comfort in nothing else than to give back to God and to share of God's goodness, and in the area and the field of pastoral ministry.
That we might as well jump into your story because it's a very interesting story. I mean, exciting story. I know the plans I have for you. Would you say that God would then have ordained for you to be in ministry based on what took place at the very beginning of your life? Because God forms us in our mother's womb, as the Bible says. Let's begin from there. Your mother's womb.
That's a very good transition there. It's interesting because I'm one of 13 siblings for my mom, and I'm one of 26 for my father. And Mommy was 5 months pregnant with me at that time, being the 10th child. And circumstance would have it that she was taken to the hospital because she was getting ready to give birth, being only 5 months pregnant. When she got there, the doctors knew her very well. Excuse me, because she was a frequent visitor there.
With 10 children,
Yes.
Are you being the 10th?
And I being the 10th. And the doctor knew the reason for her being there and the cause for an early delivery. And the cause was not a good one. It was a result of a sexually transmitted infection that caused it, and the doctor wouldn't care to waste time with something that has little or no chance of survival. So when he delivered the 5-month-old fetus, he threw it, 5-month-old fetus, sorry, he threw it in the trash can, because it is impossible from his standpoint for a 5-month-old fetus to live. And they told mommy, you did not have a baby. You had a 5-month-old fetus that did not survive. And hours later, when she was discharged, she said she heard a voice. I've come to know that voice as the Holy Spirit. That despite the situation or whatsoever, the still small voice is still active, no matter what the circumstance or circumstances may be.
Absolutely.
And she said she heard this voice saying, go back to the trash. And when she went back and she looked there, in the trash was still in the fetal position, her baby. And more than that, the baby was still breathing. So she took a rag from her pocket, picked up her baby, put it in the rag. At this time, they didn't know if the baby was male nor female, so the term "it" was ascribed to it. And so it was very small, it didn't even weigh a pound. She said that if she would put me up to a light, she can see through and through the fetus or through me. And she put it in her pocket and she went home. When she got home, she was greeted by 9 hungry other kids. And being a single mother, she took the dress that she had on off, placed it in a basin of water that was there, and she attended to them. Then somewhere along the line, somebody asked, Mommy, what about the baby? What did the doctor say? Then she remembered that the baby is in the rag. And the rag is in the pocket of the dress, and the dress is in the basin of water. You know, I often tell people when I share this part of the story that I was baptized a long time.
I was just going to say that. You had an initial immersion.
An initial immersion. And she said she ran outside and she searched and she found her baby still alive. And she said the same voice that that told her to go back to the trash said, stand with it out in the sun. The only incubator that I know is the Son of Righteousness. And while standing there, the police officers came, along with social workers and nurses from the same hospital. And they said to her, you have stolen hospital's property.
Wow.
And you need to return it. But Mommy was bent on keeping her baby alive and safe. So she did not. But 8 days later, she had to take the baby back to the same hospital. She was a poor woman. The hospital was free. It was a government hospital. And she met the same doctor and the same staff. But this time it was very crucial because the fetus, after examining, the doctor said the fetus blood is poison. And if the fetus does not have a blood transfusion, it will die. When they called the blood bank, they said they don't have any blood at hand at that time. While the doctor was explaining to Mommy that there is no blood, the phone rang. And they said, we found a blood. And it's the blood of a white man that is not yet screened. The doctor explained to Mommy that they cannot go through with this because the blood is not screened. They don't know if the blood is good or bad. And Mommy said to them, give it to the baby. It is already screened by heaven. The blood is screened by heaven. Give it to him.
Wow.
You know, I've never found somebody with such faith as this woman.
Yeah. I mean, you see that from the very beginning. For her to even go into the trash. And pick up the baby. She obviously not only was it a matter of faith, but it was a connected faith.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah, you know. So let's get back to the story.
And so the doctor, to appease this crazy lady, decided to do the blood transfusion. Finished about 11:30 p.m. that night. He returned to mommy and said, "You can leave, because at midnight that dead." We did not yet that dead.
It and that.
And that. We did not follow protocols. We did not do what was necessary to preserve the life of the fetus. So you can go home 1 hour after midnight. When the fetus was to die, when they went to check, the fetus was still alive. And if that is not God, then I don't know who it is. Man's protocol to preserve life failed, which lets us know one thing, that life is only in the hands of God.
Yeah.
Despite all the equipments that is available, God is not governed by man-made equipments. He's God all by himself.
Yeah. The Lord giveth.
Aye.
And the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, you know, there's a saying that says man's extremity and limitations is God's opportunity.
Oh yes, certainly,
Yes,
certainly.
We're going to stick a pin right there. Let's take a break.
Okay.
And we'll be back on the other side of this program. We've been listening to Jermy's story, and what an exciting story of how God takes nothing and brings life to it. He's still God. And maybe you would like to try him as you listen to Jermy's story today. So stick and stay. We'll be right back on the other side.
Bahamas Academy of Seventh-day Adventists is committed to helping students develop character through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, promoting high standards of excellence and preparing students for service now and for eternity. Bahamas Academy aspires to train the head, heart, and hands of a child. Our goal is to provide a holistic education that will create the best citizens now, but more importantly, prepare students for a place in heaven. We aim daily to achieve this goal. With over 100 years of operation, Bahamas Academy is certainly an educational success story in many ways. Why not make us your school of choice?
Welcome once again to Around the Conference. I'm your host, Paul Scavella, and we're talking with Jermy Arnold, a fourth-year student at NCU, one who has become a part of the theology program in preparation for pastoral ministry. And Jermy's been talking to us about the plans that God has for his life. And so we're going to pick up where we left off, Jermy. We were talking about the blood transfusion and the whole process with that. So you're an it and you're that.
That, right. And so after the midnight hour that the doctor gave me to live, 1 hour after that hour, they went to check and they saw and found out that the fetus was not dead but still alive.
God is not dead.
I often say man can appoint,
Yes.
but God ultimately disappoints. And the doctor was amazed that immediately he got on the phone with Jamaica. Now you will understand the first question, the answer to the first question you asked as why Jamaica?
Right.
You see, Jamaica was chosen long before I had any sense. You see, the doctor got on the phone with Jamaica. He had the timing wrong, but the event correct.
Correct. All right.
And so he got on the phone with Jamaica to arrange transportation to see how they can get the fetus to them to see how long on medication a 5 months old fetus can really live. And Mommy wouldn't have it. Mommy said, no, I did not give birth to a guinea pig. I'm going to take my baby home. Because of the nature of this particular case, they called the police station, who then sent a police officer.
She is transgressing the law again.
To stand guard so that this crazy lady don't steal this baby a second time. But Mommy is determined. So she went to the ward next door. She caused a commotion. The police officer was distracted. Mommy walked right past him, went into the room, picked up her baby, put it in the rag, put it in her pocket, and went home. Amazingly, she said to me, she said, I didn't go through the main exit because I figured they would be there waiting. So I chose to walk all the way around where the morgue was located. She said, while walking through there, she whispered to the baby, boy, you're going through your valley of the shadow of death. Yes. And when she got home, waiting for her was the police officer, and the saga continued. The last visit they made to her, they said to her, if this fetus die under your care, you're going to jail for murder. She then said to them, I will enjoy my time in jail because I rather it die under my love and care than under your neglect. You know, I wish that they would still be human beings with this compassion and that my mother displayed for me. If that compassion or this compassion would have been here with us today, we wouldn't have the world that we have today.
Yes, yeah.
And so 1 year later, Mommy had to take me back to the same hospital where she met the same doctor.
This hospital must be a famous hospital.
And when she got there, the doctor, I don't know, probably I am just saying this because I was involved in it on the flip side. But I often say if I was that doctor, I would have recognized there and then that I might be a doctor by profession, but there is a great physician somewhere.
Yes, yes.
I would have recognized my own limitation and give credit to the being or to God, or you don't. It doesn't have to be that you even acknowledge that there is a God, you know, but you acknowledge that there is a power working behind the scenes. Somebody bigger than all of this.
Yeah. You know, the reality is that life all around us and within ourselves, we come to points in our lives where we discover and we come to realize that we are limited.
Right.
And there has to be somebody bigger than us. Who put the moon and the stars and caused them to move in orbit and the sea to flow on air and the sun to rise and the moon.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Certainly, absolutely.
There must be a God.
Must be a God.
But he said to Mommy, don't get too attached to it. I'm still on it.
Still on it. My goodness.
At the age of 2, he will be totally crippled because his bones were not properly developed. At the age of 3, he will be totally blind. At the age of 4, he will be a complete retard. And at the age of 5, he will die. And again, God stepped in because at the age of 6, I went into primary school. Not with a cane because I wasn't blind. I wasn't wheeled in because I wasn't crippled. It wasn't a special school or a special class because I wasn't a retard. I'm saying that God works behind the scenes and works in our lives. There are times when you might not see him or even feel him, but he's right there.
Yes, yes.
And to go even farther than that, there were times when it was very difficult as an individual to survive because Mommy was extremely poor.
Yeah.
Our father
and with 10 children.
Oh, with 10 children, and our father was not there.
I was just going to ask you that. Where's Daddy in all of this?
In all of this, he is absent.
He's absent. Wow.
Family members withdrew their support from her because, interestingly, they said to Mommy that God did not give them this baby. They said to Mommy that you brought home a demon spirit. They did not regard me as a human being, but as something rejected and discarded and something only worth burying. And because she would not adhere to their counsels and suggestions, they withdrew their help from her.
So how long does this continue for?
This continued until I grew up. When I became about 13 years old, I realized the tension I had with certain family members, and I went to mommy, and then she gave me the story because they still had in their mind that maybe this is not a human being. But
Not normal.
no, this is not normal. So it is not from God. And that's the misconception that the world have. We believe that only things that we classify as beautiful and good comes from God. But God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
And as I grew, it began to dawn on them that maybe, just maybe, this might really be a human being. And to make things more interesting, we were extremely poor, like I said. We lived in a 2-story wooden structure. The house was so old that it took on the shape of an S. People used to call it the sexy house, the house with hips. So when people were stranded and they were lost, they would just tell them, hey, go right by that house, the sexy house. And many times I found myself eating from the trash in the public street, searching for bottles to sell, to buy food to eat. You see, where I'm coming from to where I am today, it is only a result of who God is.
Yes. Yeah.
And amidst all of that, I sought a different path because Christianity wasn't working out. I had a problem with mommy's God. Because mommy's God seemed to me at that time like a tyrant. Because she would often say to us, the cattle on 1,000 hills belong to him. But yet we were starving. So God can just sell one of the cattle, give mommy the money, and we can eat.
Or you could give her the cattle.
Give her the cattle. And it's amazing, it's amazing that in the midst of all of this, mommy still held the faith that there is a God and he's working things out. But I couldn't wait.
The reality is that when we go back to your birth, and again I say her mindset obviously was one of total and complete faith in God. For her to go back to the trash. Well, first of all, she hears a voice.
Definitely.
And she knows the voice. Because she could have, if she didn't know the voice, she could say, you know what, that's just my mind.
Right.
Playing tricks on me.
Right.
I've been through this.
Right.
Why go back?
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
And so, would you say then that having developed some degree of doubt because of mother's God, where did you transition to then embracing the faith of your mother? Because now you're studying to be a pastor.
Right.
So something happened.
So I left the church with one conviction, that there is no God. Nobody could have told me otherwise. I became a DJ living in the world, and I met God one night. And how I met him is a very strange way. Because up to the point I left, I only knew mommy's God. But that night I met my God. And so I was playing in the club, playing music and everything. I was about 14 years old. And there was a fight in the club, and my friends was involved, and they left. The young man that they were in the fight with went home and brought back his friends and his siblings, about 15 men. They came into the club and they were making gestures, hand gestures at me, signaling to me that you're dead, you are going to die tonight. Realizing what is about to take place, I closed my laptop, I put my disc and everything in the knapsack, and I decided to leave the club, to make my way home. But I was not as afraid because adjacent from the club was a police station. I didn't like police, but tonight I will make an exception. Amazingly, when I got out there, the police station was closed for the first time. I was still not as terrified because a couple yards ahead, there is a 24-hour hotel and casino with taxi service. So I would just reach there. You see, I had all this figured out.
Mm-hmm.
I would just reach there, get into a taxi and go home, and I escaped death. When I reached there, it was closed.
Hmm.
And in my fright, I decided to make a run for it. The guys were coming behind me in their vehicles. And in my fright, I ran into a dead end. Now I'm speaking to somebody today.
Hmm.
In my fright, I ran into
To
a dead end. And there the vehicles came in and closed me in. The big brother of the young man came out the vehicle. And he asked me the question. He said, "You're the one that beat up my little brother?" And I said, "No, sir." All this while I thought I was a man. But in the point of death, I realized that I am nothing but a lad. And he called his little brother and said, "Is it him?" His little brother said, "Yes, it's him."
Mm-mm.
Now heaven knows I didn't touch him.
Mm-hmm.
And he took a gun from his waist. And he said to me, "I will teach you a lesson." He placed the gun to my head and he pulled the trigger and the gun snapped. Now, in my mind, I was saying, okay, lesson learned.
Mhm.
If I continue with this type of lifestyle, I can die. But when I looked at his face, he had a perplexed look. Looking at the gun, he aimed it in the air, he pulled the trigger and the gun fired. Then it dawned on me immediately that he wasn't trying to teach me a lesson. He was trying to make me the lesson. And he put it back to my head and he pulled the trigger and the gun snapped. And I said, "I'm a baseball fan, and 3 strikes you're out."
Mm-hmm.
I am now determined that he will not put that to my head a third time. I took off my knapsack, I threw it to the ground. As it were, the scripture says, I lay aside every weight.
Computer and all.
Or everything
Everything.
that bind me.
Yeah.
And I made one final run for it. I haven't prayed for years because I believed there was no God. But it was in that moment that I began praying. I was running and I was praying and I was saying, if you're really true and you really exist, take me home safely. When I reached home, I was shaking, I was in sweat, I was just frightened. And I pushed the back door. Nobody knew I came because my habit every week was I would sneak through my room window and come back through the door. Mm-hmm. And so when I pushed the back door, what I saw changed my life forever. Mommy was on her knees praying that I would reach home safe, praying that God would preserve my life.
Yes.
Then I realized why the gun snapped. Not because it wasn't my time to die, but because there was somebody at home praying.
for me.
That's when I met God for me. Because if he could have spared my life when I was living in rebellion to him, he is indeed a just and a loving Father.
Amen.
And at that moment, I decided to surrender my life to him and take on, as you just said, Mommy's faith in God.
Well, Jermy, we need another whole half an hour because our time is just up. But, we want to thank God for you.
Yes.
And as we close, I'm going to let you close. I want you to speak to that camera right there and just talk to somebody and invite them to make Jesus their choice.
Thank you. It might be that you have been forgotten, rejected, or like I was, left to die. But I want you to know that, like what the book of Jeremiah says, Jeremiah 29 and verse 11, that God have a plan for your life. And it's amazing, this passage, because when I read it, I get to understand that God's plan will be established at the end. Because I had my own plan for my own life. And my plan failed. And upon the rubble of my plan, God established his plan. You might, at this moment, be doubting God. There are times when you question if he's even real or does he exist. I want to tell you today that God is real and he does exist. Despite the fact that you might not see him or sometimes even feel his presence, he's always there. And he said the plans that he have for you is a plan to prosper you. So if you're not living in communion with God, you're not living a prosperous life. I want to encourage you and invite you to make Jesus your choice, because with Jesus at the center of your life, you will live a prosperous life. May God bless you. Thank you.